Hello and welcome to this kind of different short summary. Instead of just a singular tropical system, I'm going to be talking about an entire season, specifically the 1852 hurricane season. This is the second official Atlantic season to be added to the HURDAT being the Hurricane Data List, and something that I highly recommend that you check out on Wikipedia. That stuff is very nice. Now, the a season overview instead of just an overview for a singular system, there were a total of 5 recorded storms this season, and all 5 of them became hurricanes. There was one major hurricane, that one being Hurricane 1. All hurricanes combined caused a total confirmed amount of deaths of more than 100 people, and a total of, in 1852 US dollars, $1 million in damages. Again, this is all of the confirmed things. I'm not going to try to either make up numbers or try and dig way too deep and not find anything. There is also the reason of I'm covering an entire season because there is just a brief overview of each of these hurricanes that I could even find to begin with. And because that's not what numbers work, we are starting with Hurricane 1. Big long track scene here. Hurricane 1 is also known as the Great Mobile Hurricane of 1852. Hurricane 1 was first seen on August 19th, or at least first observed, I should say, 230 kilometers north of Puerto Rico. By around August 20th, it would achieve hurricane status, and by August 22nd, it would peak with winds of 115 miles per hour. As we can see here, it would landfall at Category 3 strength near Pascagoula, Mississippi. Some damages include that waves, the strong waves from the hurricane, as you might expect, created 4 new channels in the Chandeleur Islands. Where are the Chandeleur Islands? I have no idea. Somewhere along its path, I know that. Now, this is called the Great Mobile Hurricane because it produced a 12-foot storm surge in Mobile, Alabama. That is absolutely insane to think about. Because of this storm surge, much of the town was destroyed. Because of the intense winds, at Category 3 after all, trees were downed as far as 50 kilometers inland. On August 30th, so around, I would say maybe 2 days have passed in between Hurricane 1 peaking at 115 and it landfalling. So this has been around 6 days of it traveling through the US. It was last observed 200 kilometers southeast of Cape Cod, that being the boot of Massachusetts. We are switching gears to Hurricane 2. Hurricane 2 was first observed on September 5th, around 110 kilometers southeast of Christiansted, at this point part of, I believe it was the Dutch Virgin Islands. Hurricane 2 would landfall near Ponce, Puerto Rico, with winds of 80 miles per hour. Surprisingly, this storm was already a hurricane when it was observed. Damage was the heaviest between the towns of Guayanilla and Mayaguez, and as you might expect, this damage included severe flooding, and as you might expect from severe flooding, this would damage crops and roads pretty severely. On top of the winds doing this as well. Hurricane 2 is the hurricane that is estimated to have caused around 100 deaths. Now, this is the only hurricane that has a recorded death amount to this. No hurricane in the 1852 season has a death count, at least from what I was able to find. Oops, sorry there. Unfortunately, there's also not that much data on Hurricane 2. What we at least know is that spoiler is that Hurricane 2 might be Hurricane 3. I will list these because they are listed separate on the HURDAT, and even though it is very heavily implied that they are the same system, they will still be recorded differently. What you at least know about Hurricane 3 is that it was spotted as a hurricane almost smack dab in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico on around September 9th. Again, this system may be Hurricane 2. Again, it is listed differently. At around 0 UTC, September 12th, Hurricane 3 would landfall at Clearwater, Florida, as a minimal hurricane. Minimal hurricane being winds of 74, 75 miles per hour. This storm, I should say, would weaken as it traveled overland, as tropical systems do, but then re-intensify into a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean proper. It was last seen 400 kilometers east-southeast of Cape Hatteras. Very interestingly, the only recorded rainfall I could find for Hurricane 3 is only 14 millimeters, which is absolutely not a lot. And again, if Hurricane 3 is actually Hurricane 2, that would mean that Hurricane 2 landfell 2 separate times, number 1, and number 2, I get it, was a hurricane 3 separate times, which is something that I do not know that any other tropical storm has come close to. I bet you that plenty have done this, I just do not know about them. We are switching gears to Hurricane 4. Hurricane 4 was first spotted on September 22nd, located, and this was around 330 kilometers east of Guadalupe. By September 23rd, it was at hurricane status as it trekked its way through the Lesser Antilles, peaking at 90 miles per hour north of Puerto Rico. By September 30th, it was last tracked 630 kilometers east of Cape Hatteras. However, according to one hurricane researcher at the time, his last data point put it apparently dissipating near the Azores. Where are the Azores? They're over all the way by the West African coast, which is where tropical waves, tropical disturbances usually start to form, not end. So that is interesting. Other than that, there is really no other information I could find necessarily on Hurricane 4. I do have a fair bit more on Hurricane 5, our last one here. On October 6th, Hurricane 5 was already seen as around a Category 2 east of Jamaica. As you can tell from its path here, Hurricane 5 would just barely not make landfall on the Yucatan Peninsula of Central America. On October 9th, the hurricane would landfall east of Apalachicola, say that 5 times fast, Florida, with winds of 105 miles per hour. So this hurricane was in a very stable environment throughout the whole time it was in around the Bahamian Seas area and throughout the Gulf of Mexico. Bahamian Seas is not the right word, is not the right turn of phrase, I'm saying it anyway. As you might expect with a hurricane brushing nearby a island country or just land in general, there was heavy damage in Jamaica because this storm got so close and at such a high strength. Both Florida and Georgia, remember Georgia does indeed have a coastline, experienced a 7-foot storm tide. Now, a storm tide would just mean that the high tide would just be heavier, would be bigger than normal. So that would just mean that more water was pushed ashore, simply put. Even Georgia experienced hurricane winds from Hurricane 5. On October 11th, Hurricane 5 is noted to have entered the Atlantic Ocean proper via North Carolina. So, what's the significance of this season? It is one of only 3 seasons in which all systems recorded at least became hurricanes. The other two here are 1858 and 1884. Now, if you notice a trend here, this is the 1852 hurricane season. These are all during the 1800s. It is estimated that before the time of much more accurate data and before the satellite era, there is an estimated around 5 storms missed every year. And given how particularly active September seems to have been this season, I would have expected a relatively more active than normal, say, season, but we do not know any other storms from this season, so it is just the 5. Sorry, before we get on to our next points, also, obviously, the 1800s are before the satellite era and modern and technology as we know it. And this is, of course, going to lead to those 5 or more storms missed every year, as you might expect. The main way that storms were detected were by ships just roaming throughout the area. And even then, some ships may not even have reported that there was a tropical system because they might not have thought that it was one. Of course, human error, that can happen too. 4 out of the 5 recorded storms made landfall on the US, and yes, that does include Puerto Rico. I'm including Puerto Rico in here. And all 5 affected land in some way, shape, or form. Again, this is because without satellites, without any buoys out there weren't any in 1852. The only way of detecting hurricanes would again be from ships, and they would have to make sure that they actually were told people on land once they got there. And of course, only until a certain point on land can you really see a hurricane. And that is it for the relatively short summary of the 1852 hurricane season. Of course, please note again, 1852, before modern hurricane tracking technologies. So there is a lot of caveats to all this data. The tracks presented might not even be fully correct. I would assume that a great deal of it may actually just be guesstimated relatively heavily, although I am by no means going to say that they were, because that's not my place to say that. But that is all for the first time that I have gone over a full season in one video. If I do have another thing like this, it would probably be over multiple videos and on a playlist. Like, for example, I absolutely will be doing that with the 2005 hurricane season because just 3 hurricanes in general, if you know the 3, then you know, need their own videos. Rita, Wilma, and Katrina, of course, because they are just absolutely devastating. They need their own videos. But again, that is all that I have for the 1852 hurricane season. I thank you all so much for watching until the very end. And until then, I'll see y'all folks, and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you again so much for watching.